We have reason to believe that a small set of Capitol Hill police officers may have been involved in a pipe bomb conspiracy on January 6th. In this interview, I'm going to talk to Steve Baker, and we're going to discuss the details of his new revelation, new video that's come out about a third pipe bomb location that I didn't even know of until I talked to Steve, and also some details that have never come out from my office, little things that at the time may not have been important enough to print, but now I think we need to get it all out there, and that's what's in this segment.
Congressman.
Steve, how you doing?
I'm great, man. It's good to be with you today. You've had a rather, what's the best way to say the last 2 days? Wild ride the last couple of days. Obviously dealing with the Epstein file vote. It was a victory, a huge victory, not only for the American people, but for what you've been working on for quite a number of months now. More significantly, though, you've had a wild personal ride for the last year and a half. I think I told you this story the other day, but I was walking almost a year and a half ago from the district courthouse, several blocks from here, and I was on my way to your office to meet with you to discuss the pipe bomb.
It was on my calendar.
Yeah, the January 6th pipe bomb investigation. And on my way over here, one of your staffers called me and said, we have to abort the meeting because you had received a call from Kentucky and you had to make an emergency trip home. And your life changed on that day.
So, yeah, that was the day my wife died, was the day I was going to meet with you on this. There's no conspiracy there. You know, there's an autopsy. My son found her unresponsive. No foul play, nothing like that. But the net result of that, you know, my life just blowing up that day, was that you and I never had that meeting, and this January 6th pipe bomb thing had been a passion of mine. It was like singularly among all the congressmen here focused on it. Barry Loudermilk's committee was doing things, but it was my staff who discovered, by pouring through all the videos that we were able to go look at, we could cross the street here and go over to another building and sit down at a little workstation. Right. And you could pick cameras and you could watch stuff. And so my staff had, before anybody else on the planet, discovered how the second pipe bomb on January 6th was found. And that set off, you know, a crusade for me to figure out who put these pipe bombs out. Why? And by the way, this was a couple years at least after the FBI had allegedly done this big dragnet. So we discovered that two people that looked like just regular passersby had found this second pipe bomb. And they walked up to a couple different cop cars, SUVs there at the DNC. And they told the guys in the cop cars, and the guys in the cop cars finished their sandwiches because it was about lunchtime before they got out and looked at this pipe bomb.
We actually see another cop car deliver their food to them just before that.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen that part. Yeah. Must have been some really good food because it took priority over this pipe bomb.
Yeah.
And so I was very interested in that. Why didn't they rush to go find it? And then, so we started watching more and more of this video. There were interesting circumstances with the cameras. The camera had been conveniently turned away from where they did find the pipe bomb. It turns out, once I discovered this and started to ring the alarm, hey, 2 random people on the street. At the time, I thought it was civilians.
Right.
And I get a call, hey, Congressman Massie, we need to let you know, those weren't 2 random people. Those were counter surveillance, undercover Capitol Hill police that found that pipe bomb.
Right.
And you need to just don't worry. those wouldn't be suspects. Because that, in my mind, I thought it was, I went to MIT. You can take statistics or you can take probability to fulfill this one math requirement. I took probability. And I started thinking about what is the probability that 2 pipe bombs laid out in the open for 16 hours with so much foot traffic, and then one got discovered right before the breach, or right as the breach was happening, or right before the breach, I think. Yeah. You can correct me.
That's correct.
Okay, right before the breach, one of these pipe bombs gets discovered. Okay, that could happen. But what's the probability another one gets, the only other one that existed on, in Washington, D.C. that day, got discovered within 40 minutes of the first one.
20 minutes.
20 minutes, yeah. Okay. The probability of that is extremely low.
Right.
So that I started thinking about that, and then we looked at how the pipe bomb was destroyed. They tried to hide that. The cameras turned away from that second pipe bomb being destroyed, but we were able to find another camera angle that showed the pipe bomb being destroyed. In any case, I asked Christopher Wray, shortly, by the way, I had to move heaven and earth. Remember, the videos weren't out yet. You couldn't.
Right.
But Kevin McCarthy, his speakership was hanging by a thread.
Yeah.
And he needed me. I was on the rules committee, and we got along pretty well. And I said, hey, I need to get this video. Oh, no problem. Just ask my chief. Or it was he's got a few different chiefs, okay.
Right.
But ask this guy and he'll get it for you. Well, this guy kept giving me a runaround. I couldn't get this video that showed all this stuff. And eventually, like the day before Christopher Wray was coming, I used that event to tell McCarthy, look, you guys aren't giving me this video. They won't let us have it. I mean, I could have gone over there with a camera and filmed it on the screen, but that wasn't permitted either. And I didn't want to lose my access to this stuff. I wanted a legitimate disclosure.
Yeah.
So Kevin said, get it done. And his chief that was in charge of this, keeping all this stuff, let me have the video. And I showed it to Christopher Wray in a hearing. And first I asked him, do you know how the second pipe bomb was discovered? And he didn't know. And then I said, well, let me show you. And then he said, wouldn't that guy be a suspect? Would anybody who found a pipe bomb be a suspect? By the way, later I got a chance to question the assistant FBI director in charge of the DC field office, Steve D'Antuono, in a transcribed interview. Now, the Judiciary Committee didn't bring him in for that. I was looking at my calendar, and a lot of times these transcribed interviews are just conducted by staff, and even members won't even be in there most of the time, and they could go for several hours. They had brought him in because he was also in charge of I'm going to call it raid on Mar-a-Lago.
Right.
But
he was also involved in Michigan.
Correct. The Fed-napping in Michigan
case, right.
He got reassigned from Michigan and came to D.C. before January 6th. Was it a few months before, or was it?
Just a few months before up in Michigan, right?
Yeah. Okay, so now he's there, all these coincidences, but I see he's on the calendar and Judiciary Committee's interviewing him. He's sworn in, and I thought this would be a great chance to go ask him about these pipe bombs. And so I won't go into too much of that here because that's all transcribed interview that's been released publicly. But his answers to my questions, first of all, I was delighted that he didn't just say that's a subject of ongoing investigation I can't answer. He genuinely was answering questions, whether he answered them truthfully or whether he even knew the answers, not sure. But I asked him, would the person who found the second pipe bomb be a suspect? And he said, that's investigation 101. Of course.
Right.
That person would be. Did you interview him? Well, I got no answer there as to whether they interviewed him. Maybe it was something like, well, I'm sure my agents pursued every outlet. So then I asked him about geofencing the phone. How about, were you able to use phone records to identify any suspects? And he used the word conspiracy theory, not me. He said, oh, I know this sounds like I don't want to start any conspiracy theories or something like that. He said, but the phone data was corrupted from one of the providers, and that compromised our ability to geolocate this person. And I'm like, what? And so, because they had identified virtually everybody on the scene of the Capitol and arrested them, by this time, using geolocation.
Right.
How was it that it was corrupted for one little spot at one time in history that's very close to everything else?
I've seen and have sat in on several of the January 6 trials in which the FBI is called up to testify, and they will demonstrate, and of course they put it up in the AV screens and full color, high definition for the juries to look at, and they will show people being tracked through the Capitol building, upstairs, into the rotunda, through the statuary hall, down into the crypt, even their drives from Dallas, if they came from Dallas, Texas, where they stopped, where they slept, and they, so they're tracking all these people, but that one person on the evening of the 5th, January 5th, between 7:30 and 8 o'clock, they couldn't seem to nail that individual down.
And there's some other things that some other leads I had chased. And by the way, Jim Jordan gave me a little bit of resource. We had a person on Judiciary Committee who was following up a lot of this stuff, because as a member, you get distracted, you have to go do other things. Mm-hmm. And there's a public report that was put out at the beginning of this year, basically at the end of Congress. Kind of got to clean up and get everything to publish your reports. Mm-hmm. So there's a long report on the results of our investigation, our sort of side investigation of the investigators that we were doing in Judiciary. By the way, that's the role of the Judiciary Committee, is to have oversight over DOJ, FBI, and ATF.
Right.
Those are the agencies we oversee. So I know we're going to get into more of that stuff that happened before my life got upended that day that we were going to meet. And I just recently got married. My personal affairs are pretty good shape right now. And I see a story that Steve Baker and Glenn Beck are talking about. And I'm like, I remember Steve Baker. That guy knew everything about this stuff. So, and then I saw that it wasn't being released. So that's when I contacted you.
Right.
And I said, hey, Steve, I'm still alive. I know I've been absent in this investigation for a while, but I'd love to know what you know and see if there's any way I can help. And I got on a plane.
Well, more significantly, what you said I'm still alive, but you said I'm also not compromised yet.
Yeah. If you can tell, I'm not one of them or whatever.
Right.
I said, where are you? Are you out in one of the states, or are you in D.C.? You said, actually, I'm in D.C. I said, I'm going to get on a plane and come meet you if that's okay. So, I had district events, I had stuff I was doing in Kentucky, but I took like 12 hours out of my life, and my new wife came with me. We came up here and met you for a few hours.
Right.
And I tried to poke holes in your story. I asked you all kinds of questions, and I learned things, that aren't yet published even now.
Right.
And I said, Steve, you got to get this out there and then see where, to see where the chips fall, because I went from 90% certain that some Capitol Police were involved in the January 6th pipe bomb to 95% certain. Mm-hmm. And now I'm at 99% certain after this new story that you put out this week.
Right.
So how do we, and again, I'm doing this on probability. I think the probability may even be higher than that, based on things that you and I know that have never been printed.
Right.
And that's why we wanted to talk today.
Yeah, exactly. And, your interest in the pipe bomb in particular, because there's so many. There's thousands of January 6th stories, and there's dozens of important events that took place that day. The use of less than lethals on the crowd improperly, and what many experts have even deemed as borderline illegal, if not criminally negligent, is the actual terms they use. That's a very important story. Then you have the individual stories like the Oath Keepers trial, in which it was discovered that actual Capitol Police officers perjured themselves in that trial. It's not to say they wouldn't have been convicted anyway, but there should have been some sort of action taken against those Capitol Police officers. It just seems to be that Capitol Police get by with things that other police departments and other cops from other departments don't get by with. Any speculation on why there seems to be a history of that here on Capitol Hill?
Well, I mean, the Capitol Police have the keys to my office, right? They don't need a search warrant to come in here. They could just open it up and come in. Just checking on things.
Right.
Even there's one member's related to me that they came in and saw one of these guys photographing a whiteboard in his office. So, by the way, I think 99% of the Capitol Hill police are top notch. They're the friendliest people, and they are, they do put their lives on the line.
Right.
Somebody could walk up and one day and they don't get to go home.
That has happened.
It has happened, does
Right.
happen at the crash gates so I have immense respect for them.
Right.
I like to talk to them. They're just regular people like you and me, most
Right.
of them.
But Capitol Police are not subject to FOIA,
Right.
for instance.
There was some discussion about, Capitol Police should have offices out in the United States so
Right.
they can take care of members of Congress. And I'm like, whoa, no, there's no FOIA.
Right.
Because they enjoy the same privilege that every member of Congress does,
Right.
which is speech or debate immunity. They're, by extension,
Right.
they are included in that coverage, so I'm not FOIAble.
Right, and despite the fact that there's 1,800 cameras in that room you talked, we have access to 1,800 cameras in the Capitol CCTV viewing room over in the building next door over here. I've been in there, I've spent many, many hours in that room myself. And despite the fact there's 1,800 cameras all over the place watching what you guys do and what's happening around the Capitol, there's still some purposeful dead zones because there is a respect for members' privacy in certain areas of the Capitol. For instance, there were no cameras where Ashley Babbitt was shot, but that was the Speaker's lobby. So it's kind of a place where they can go outside the chamber and adjust themselves and have conversations and not be on camera. And I think the American people would understand that part of that. What I don't think the American people understand about Capitol Police is that because of their dignitary protection detail, there's a certain element of something called the Praetorian Guard involved there, where they seem to have a little too much information about some of the most powerful people here on the Hill. And then when that leverage is needed to shut down an investigation, for instance, do you see any of that happening?
Well, it was like pulling teeth just to get that video out for myself, right?
Right.
And the question was, well, who's in control here? Is it the Speaker of the House or is it the Capitol Police?
Yeah.
So I call it the deep Congress. There are aspects of Congress that never change regardless of the election. Or they may change, but it's not because of an election. Generally, you keep the same House physician.
Yeah.
That's part of the parliamentarian stays, regardless of which party is in power. A lot of times the sergeant at arms is still the same person, regardless of who's in power, the clerk of the House. It's a staff that has a lot of control over how things work here.
So you identified and you've referred to the individual who walked up and informed the two SUVs in front of the DNC's parking garage. They had them blocked. They had the entrance to the parking garage blocked off because the Vice President-elect and sitting Senator at the time, Kamala Harris, was inside the building. which is another story and an odd story in and of itself. Why was she there and not where her coronation was taking place over at the Capitol? That's a whole different question. But when this guy notified them, and you referred to him as the backpack guy, he had a partner, and now the partner was walking around. He actually had a man bun. He has long hair, kind of long stringy hair when his hair's not up in a man bun.
Okay, yeah, I call him man bun guy and backpack guy.
Right, and backpack guy was wearing a hat with a white front to it, so he was really easy.
Let's be clear, though, when we say backpack guy, we're not talking about the person on January 5th that was carrying a backpack.
Correct.
And, probably the one that planted the pipe bombs. We're talking about the day of the discovery.
Right.
The two counter surveillance officers who were wearing just plain clothes.
Yeah.
One of them, we'll call him man bun guy and backpack guy.
There you go.
Yeah.
So surely there was an attempt to interview these two characters, right?
You would think.
You would think?
So I thought, well, why don't I see if I can talk to him? So we asked, could I talk to these guys? So they came over to my office, but not backpack guy, man bun guy.
Okay.
Came over, and he had a handler who would often interrupt and answer questions for him.
Mm-hmm. Now, we've revealed the handler to the public, so we're not hiding anything here. This was an individual, a gentleman brought over from ATF, as a matter of fact. He was the incident commander at the DNC the day of the bombing from ATF. Mm-hmm. And then I think he had a short stint in between at Metropolitan Police. Then he was brought in to replace then Assistant Chief of Police Yogananda Pittman when she got her cushy deal to go become the Chief of Police at Berkeley, UC Berkeley. And so he took her position as Assistant Chief, and he was the guy that accompanied Man Bun Guy. Mm-hmm. What happened?
Well, I had a few questions for him. Well, first of all, I asked why I couldn't talk to the other guy, and he was on vacation or not available or something. Mm-hmm. I never did get to speak to the other guy. One of the judiciary staff did get to speak to him, like on a Zoom call with no video.
Right, right.
And we know the individual's name. There's no need to say it here. But so here's the question that I asked after looking at the video of the available video. Remember, the cameras were pointed away, right. But you could go in and find alternate cameras that were maybe from further away, or maybe after some time the camera panned back. And so using that information, I had a few questions. So one of the questions was, who sent you down there to look at the DNC? Like, how did you know to go look there? And it wasn't a real good answer. Something like, that was my sector or something. You know, we're assigned sectors, and that's just the sector that I look in. And because I thought it was interesting, they found it within, what was it, you said 20 minutes or something to find in the first one.
Correct.
And then I said, well, why so, we watched a video, I think. I showed it to him. It's like, why so nonchalant? Where was the rush? Why wouldn't you want to shut things down? Look, there's pedestrians still walking around, and this is allegedly a pipe bomb. And that's when his handler stepped in and said, well, you don't want to alarm people when you have a lot of crowds. You know, when you find a bomb or something, you can't yell bomb. You gotta just play it cool.
This is a career ATF guy saying we don't want to alarm people by cordoning them off from the bomb.
Yeah. And then my next question, which elicited the oddest body language I've ever seen in a meeting, and no real answer, was, well, so then you went looking for another pipe bomb, right? You found two of them within 30 minutes. You must believe the whole place is riddled with them if you're finding them this quickly. And I actually knew part of I watched video of where he went after that. They just kind of wander off.
Right.
Their job was done. They had found the second pipe bomb. They never looked for a third or a fourth or a fifth pipe bomb. And they didn't have an answer to me for why the search for pipe bombs was over once they found the second pipe bomb. No answer. Weirdest meeting in the world. And that's, so what I'm relating to you is not in any of your articles. It's not been published.
Correct.
It turns out the other individual who we didn't get to meet, we find out he's got a master's degree.
Yeah.
And he goes straight from going to college and a master's degree to being some guy that walks around here in plain clothes, just milling about, looking for odd things to happen. Way overeducated for that position.
And we hear also very well spoken.
Very well spoken. No offense to anybody else who works on the force, but he's kind of got the resume and the demeanor you wouldn't expect of somebody that's going to be walking around on the street trying to blend in and be just a normal Joe.
Yeah.
And he's since been, I believe, promoted and still at Capitol Police.
Yeah, now you're not on Loudermilk's new select subcommittee, which has been formed to investigate, as the president said, he wanted a new select committee to investigate Pelosi's unselect committee, as he likes to put it. So you're not on that committee, but these characters have become more important in the last couple of years than they even were then. But you were in that interview with Man Bun guy and with the oversight of his handler, Assistant Chief Sean Benedict. But you weren't allowed to transcribe that interview either, were you?
No, we didn't. It was just, and those were sort of the terms of, hey, just come in and talk.
Okay, all right.
And they agreed to those terms. When we later tried to do a transcribed interview with the handler, he somehow evaded that. Like, we couldn't nail it down.
And we've also heard from Loudermilk's previous committee, which was oversight subcommittee under House administration, when they were also investigating January 6 matters, that they were also denied the opportunity for either follow-up or extended, transcribed interviews with those individuals as well. So you had indicated to me the other day, though, that because of your position with Judiciary Committee, that you would request the opportunity to bring these guys back in.
Yeah.
Including other characters who have developed in the last few years.
And we should, and those need to be transcribed interviews. They need to be sworn in. I feel very strongly about that. But the reality is the FBI should be doing these things, right?
Yeah, but will you even be allowed to do that? Will Jordan allow you to bring these guys in?
Loudermilk's committee is still, some of their jurisdiction actually falls under Judiciary.
Okay. Well, it is a subcommittee to Judiciary.
So they're working with this Judiciary staffer that I worked with for a long time on the J6 pipe bomb stuff. So I'm still sort of plugged into that, and I think we should bring them in and question them, but in a transcribed interview. Then later gets released.
What about
especially in light of your new video?
Yeah. What about the acquisition of documents related to this? Because if there have been FBI interviews that we're not aware of, there will be, the form, what they refer to as 302s, which is just basically the agent's handwritten recall, an account of those interviews. But there would be 302s on all of these new characters that are coming to light and the old ones that you had brought to the American public a couple of years ago. Through Congress has a congressional liaison. Through him, will you be able to access these documents?
And this, I'm like, what's the character in the book that falls asleep for many years? And Rip Van Winkle.
Rip Van Winkle, right.
I'm like Rip Van Winkle. The day my wife passed away, my life was just torn in half, right? And so I'm just coming back up to speed on this stuff.
Yeah.
But it's all like it happened yesterday. It's sort of, that's why when you and I talk, we can refer to literally to frames in videos that we saw 2 or 3 years ago.
Right.
And so I have a renewed interest in following up on this stuff, particularly in light of the things that you've brought out here recently. And then going back, I don't know what order, we have so much stuff, I don't even know what order to cover this in, but the phone, let's talk about, since I was the guy who asked D'Antuono, the assistant FBI director in charge of the Washington field office, who had been in charge of Michigan, who was also the Mar-a-Lago raid guy, you know, and he had told us the data was corrupted from the phone company.
Right.
Well, it turns out that's not really true. There's some argument between the phone company and the FBI about, they said they got a request to preserve the phone data, but they got it 40 minutes before it was going to be wiped. And so they were trying to write it to another file, and it was too big, and it crashed. But by the time it crashed, the system had automatically wiped it. There's so many problems with that story too.
Including the preservation requests had gone in days in advance before
Right.
that. So
yeah, the preservation request wasn't 40 minutes before,
Right.
as the telecom company claims. It was days before.
right.
So who knows what to believe there? But D'Antuono should have known more than he did when he told me it was corrupted, right? He could have explained something about that. But this is from page 68 of the report that Loudermilk and I put out at the end of last Congress. By early February 2021, the FBI identified, quote, 186 phone numbers of interest derived from the FBI's analysis of the redacted geofence and cell tower dumps, unquote. According to an internal document obtained by the subcommittee, 36 of these phone numbers were assigned to agents for interviews. 98 of these phone numbers required additional investigative steps, and, wait for it, 51 of these phone numbers were identified as, quote, not needing further action, unquote, because the phones, quote, belong to law enforcement officers or persons on the exclusion list, unquote.
Exclusion list.
51 people were not, their phones weren't tracked or investigated because they were either police officers or on an exclusion list.
Why would
This is, by the way, this is January 5th.
Right.
We're not, there's 2 days here, right?
Yeah.
And I'm jumping back to January 5th to talk about the pipe bomber and the hoodie.
Why would the most sophisticated investigative organization in the world, the FBI, exclude any number at all?
You could argue in the first few days, right, that you needed to whittle down this haystack. Time is of the essence. And so we're going to find the 36 most likely and focus on those. Because it does seem unlikely, if you're new to this case,
Right.
that the police did it
Right.
or had some foreknowledge or after knowledge. But if your dragnet is only 36 people and you come back with an empty net, why wouldn't you go back to the other 150 of these phone numbers and dig in again?
Right. And as D'Antuono told you, if you're the person that found the bomb, you're, investigation 101 is that you're a suspect. Mm-hmm. Well, that was a police officer.
Mm-hmm. If a police officer had been involved the night before, the phone data was excluded from tracking and geofencing.
Right. Right. Now you're going to have to work with the FBI. Now, Director Patel and Deputy Director Bongino, they refer to this FBI as we're speaking to the American people, we're your FBI. All right, that's their rhetoric in the last several months. I can tell you that many of us don't feel that way right now. And what we're trying to figure out is our FBI any different from the old FBI, or is it that the director and deputy director are still only getting the information from the deep state actors that basically run the old FBI?
I don't think they're fully in operational control. That would be the charitable interpretation of what's going on. Based on my Epstein experience, again, for the listeners, I'm on the Judiciary Committee, so I get 5 minutes with people like Christopher Wray or ATF Director Dettelbach, who I asked about the pipe bombs
Exactly.
too, and Merrick Garland, who I asked about Ray Epps. I'm the guy who asked a question
Right.
that everybody's afraid to ask because they're afraid to look stupid. But I asked Kash Patel here just recently, the day before he had testified to the Senate, that Epstein, even though there were 1,000 victims, that Epstein was the only perpetrator.
Right.
And so the next day he came to House Judiciary, and I said, well, the victims, which we prefer to call survivors, the ones who are still alive, the survivors tell me that you guys have at least 20 names. And I don't have I told him one of the names, Jess Staley,
Right.
who's the CEO. I said, but there's 19 other names, 6 of them are billionaires. One's a movie producer.
Right.
We're not just making these up. You can go find these people in your files. And have you seen anything in your files? No. Well, I said, what about the 302 forms, the FD 302, which you've already referenced? Because the survivors know that the FBI memorializes these interviews in these 302 forms. And so, have you looked at the 302 forms? And he said, no.
Right.
And I said, well, how can you testify that there's nobody that's done any crimes or any reasonable leads to follow? And he said, well, I trust the people that work for me. Well, that's a problem. If we trusted the people that were working there, Joe Biden would still be president, right? Or Kamala Harris. Donald Trump was elected and then got a new FBI director so that he could go back and check the homework.
Right.
And what's he doing? He's testifying for their homework, which he's never even looked at.
Right.
So that's a problem.
I have a sneaking suspicion that that's true even in the pipe bomb story, because these issues that we're talking about right here were what they defined as their top 3 issues that they were going to get to the bottom of.
So let me give you another example that involves the pipe bomb. So I received a whistleblower disclosure after your story came out a week or 2 ago.
Right.
From a current FBI employee, and it's a protected disclosure under U.S. statutes. They can't go after him for disclosing this to a member of Congress, and he chose me and actually Barry Loudermilk to make this disclosure to. And his concern was that the investigation that went to Falls Church, Virginia, that got them to the doorstep of the person that you identified through gait analysis as possibly somebody that might have been the person in the hood. He said there were leads to follow. There were suggestions made to the people in charge of the investigation about how to follow up on those leads. And it was just dropped after 2 days of surveillance. And he provided supporting documents to that effect. Well, Dan Bongino, I retweeted your story, and I was in an airport, and Dan Bongino called me. I was about to get on a plane, but I spent 10 minutes talking to him before I boarded. And he said, that's a dead lead. We investigated. I guess is the guy known now, that the tall black guy.
Yeah, we still don't name him because.
Okay, I'm not going to name him.
Right.
They said we investigated that lead, and there's nothing there. There's no there, and so that's why they quit looking at it. And I said, at that point I said, but you guys you never did suspect him. The FBI never did suspect him. His build doesn't match. There's no way it could be him.
Right.
You guys were looking for somebody else, person of interest 2. In fact, your own documents say person of interest 2 did not own the Metro card that person of interest 2 used.
Right.
And he did not know that level. From just a few pages of whistleblower disclosure, I knew more about where that investigation was going when they quit it than Dan Bongino did. And that was concerning to me.
I really don't believe that either he or Cash are even aware that surveillance group, special operations group from the FBI that was pulled off of that surveillance after only 2 days. I don't even think they're aware that the 2 individuals that you and I are referring to right now, person of interest 2 and person of interest number 3, were not even interviewed until 6 days after the surveillance was pulled.
Mm-hmm. And not by the FBI,
and
right?
not by the FBI. Transit cop interviewed the big man.
Okay.
POI 3.
Right.
A transit cop interviewed him.
And then,
over the phone.
But did they? And then, yeah. I won't go any further. It's only went down that rabbit hole to point out that it does seem to me like that. I know they're busy. I know Kash Patel was busy trying to keep the Epstein files from being released this week, and they're busy doing other things. They are doing some serious things at the FBI, but they can't know everything about everything, and they seem to be getting mad that you are releasing things.
So I think that came up even in a veiled way on that telephone call, didn't it? In that 10-minute call, that there was some consternation at not only where our investigation was taking us, but also other matters that seemed a little bit odd that the FBI would be concerned about. Do you feel comfortable talking about any of that?
Yeah, when he started discussing civil litigation, and I'm thinking, wait, that can't be the FBI's job to get involved in civil litigation.
Right.
That was one aspect of it. I don't want to go too much into that conversation.
Okay. No, we can back off of that. But then after that conversation, well, actually, before that conversation, there was a second letter from this whistleblower's attorney sent to you and Congressman Loudermilk, saying that they had become aware that the FBI was going to do a mole search and look for this guy.
Yeah. Okay. So Bongino did tell me, look, tomorrow we're going to round up everybody that was involved in this investigation. We're going to get them all in a room. We're going to get to the bottom of it. And he didn't say we're trying to find the whistleblower. Mm-hmm. No. But my spidey sense went off, and I almost said to him in that moment, you better not be trying to find the whistleblower.
Right. Because
law protects that individual. But I didn't say it. Okay. Also, I'm going to say this here on camera because it's important. One of Kash Patel's staff threatened my staff with a criminal investigation if we didn't straighten up and play ball.
I was going to ask you about that, but since you brought it up, and I didn't
I'm bringing it up.
Okay, you brought it up.
And so, like a criminal investigation having nothing to do, he said it was going to be a fraud. We're going to investigate one of your staff for fraud. Right. And he told another one of my staff this. If you guys don't straighten up, if you want to play hardball, if this is how you want to play it or something like that, this member of your staff is going to get criminally investigated for fraud. a very specific threat.
Right.
And that had just happened. So I told Bongino, I said, one of your guys is threatening my guys with an FBI investigation if we don't do what you want. And he said, I'll take care of that. I'll take care of that. Because even he understood that was not a good look. It's probably illegal, right? So the fallout of that is the FBI employee who threatened my staff. I have to tell you all this, by the way, Steve, and I have to tell all the listeners this, because this is the context in which I'm worried for the whistleblower. If they're willing to retaliate against a congressional office, which has speech or debate immunity and a lot of other protections, they may be willing to retaliate against a whistleblower.
Right.
So the person who had made the threat to one of my staff through another staff, he sent a text. I got a copy of the text that said, Massie told Bongino, I have to apologize to you, or I should apologize to you. And then he said, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. He didn't apologize. He was unrepentant, let's say, really,
right.
That kind of non-apology.
Right.
And so that's the context in which when Bongino said, I'm going to have a big powwow, I'm pulling everybody in, my spidey sense went off. Well, a few hours later, I get this second disclosure from the whistleblower attorney who says, we think they're going after the whistleblower because they're having this big giant meeting. Well, I had knowledge that a big giant meeting was happening.
Right.
So this comported with, and then I also had knowledge my own staff was being threatened.
Yeah.
So I took the attorney's letter seriously and I posted it. And I said, this is concerning. Here's the letter. I want to remind Kash Patel that it's illegal to go after whistleblowers if applicable.
Right.
I didn't say he was going after one. I said if applicable. And then within 15 minutes of me putting that letter out, Bongino called me again. But remember, this was the busiest day of my life because I got the 218th signature for the Epstein petition.
Right.
and they had Lauren Boebert over at the White House Situation Room, allegedly with Pam Bondi and Kash Patel. So while on the day that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel are trying to get one of the signatures to the, and I couldn't afford to lose signatures. Like I was advising Lauren Boebert before she went to the White House on the lies that they were going to tell her when she got there. And it was a very busy day, right? This is what the two Bongino phone calls on the same day.
Right.
And then we got the 218 signature. They tried to do a quarterback sneak and pass the Epstein files by my legislation by unanimous consent, which would have allowed them to hold the bill in the House forever and let it die in the House without sending it to the Senate. Like this is all procedural stuff that I have to be tracking, or else they're going to run this thing I've been working on for 5 months off the rails.
Yeah.
And then you got to start all over, and you'll be another 5 months into this. But anyways, I was busy. I didn't take that call, and then the next day he posted some online rant that I haven't even read the whole thing yet.
You're talking about Bongino's rant.
Bongino's rant with the 2 phone records.
Yeah, he got...
At least here's what you know. You know he did talk to me that morning.
Right.
And then I believe you can also go back and look and see that the second phone call, I don't think was a good faith effort to give me a brief. It was, I think he wanted to scream at me about publishing the second attorney's letter representing the newest whistleblower who's a current FBI employee.
Well, he made in his rant, which I consider to be a little bit unhinged, but he did reference how low in esteem the public already holds Congress members, And then he says, but you decided to resort to dropping BS bombs on Twitter or X instead. And
yeah, go ahead.
And yet he still extended the opportunity for you to have a briefing to see what they knew about the pipe bombs. Are you going to take him up on that?
Well, the briefing was allegedly going to be by the guy who's criminally threatened my staff. Do you want to go? Do you want to walk into a room with the FBI who's threatening you if you don't play ball and get a briefing from the same individual who's made that threat, who is now unrepentant? By the way, between the first call, which I took, and the second call, which I didn't take because I was busy, that's when Bongino went to the FBI staffer who made the threat and told him to retract it.
Right.
And then he sent the non-apology, and it just, the whole thing was it's pretty hostile at that point.
Well, you know, because of what I do for a living and because of the sources we have in the various other agencies and departments across the federal government, the same individual has called in similar, not threats against staff, but has called in information that I would call disinformation about these investigations that are taking place to get people not to listen to what's coming out, not to pay attention to what's coming out, not to listen to either what I'm writing or what you're saying, that kind of thing. So this is happening around the government from the same individual.
All right. This is probably, I may never get a chance to go into all this in the same forum at once, so I'm going to say this too. When I hopped that plane to come see you,
Yeah,
I think it was on a Friday,
it was.
I'm on the plane and I got a text from that individual at the FBI who I've not talked to in months. And he said, I need to talk to you. And I said, I'm on a plane, I can't talk. And he said, yeah, I heard you were coming to DC. Now, the interesting thing about that is I didn't even tell my own staff where I was going. Now, obviously I had to buy some plane tickets and it was on my calendar.
It was very last minute, actually.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you were like, are you coming or not? And I'm like, well, I'm not sure if I can make it. This was like 3 or 4 hours before I got on the plane is when I got the ticket.
Right.
And somehow this person who I've not talked to for months wants to talk to me all of a sudden and had heard that I was coming to DC. I mean, I didn't even tell my own kids I was going to DC.
Right.
Anyways,
That's disconcerting.
I have to put that out there.
Yeah.
Because if a turtle gets on a fence post, usually it didn't get there by itself.
Right. That's right.
I mean, it could.
Yeah,
Because there are ways it could get up there.
So just to button this thing up,
Yeah, because we need to get to the thing that got me from 95% to 99%, the video that you've released that I don't think people have seen because they're watching the Epstein stuff.
right, and we released that late in the day yesterday. I don't know when this is going to air, but we did release the actual videos of the backpack guy and the man bun guy. We released the videos of them driving their car to the parking lot over at the Metro South station, and then getting out of their car, putting their backpacks on, and then watching their stroll towards the destinations of where not only where they ultimately found the bomb under the bench bush at the DNC, but also the curious bush over at the Congressional Black Caucus Institute that the hoodied bomber had sat at for some minute and a half the night before.
77 seconds.
There
right?
you go, 77 seconds.
This is the thing that I hadn't seen before that got me to 99%. And, you know, we should watch this video at this. What happens is, well, let's watch it right now. And then maybe they can show the video. Okay.
Okay, so this is the condensed version of the videos that we were. This is the short one of the actual hoodied bomber going over to the CVCI bush.
Walking to the bush, and looks like placing something or sitting down?
Apparently pulls something out of the backpack first and then sits down on the ground.
Next to this bush.
Right.
And lingers doing things.
Now, here we go. There we go. Now, kind of a, can you say Indian style anymore? Cross-legged, whatever, on the ground next to the bush, clearly rummaging through the backpack, which, by the way, the FBI had identified only had one bomb in it, not two.
Spends a lot of time there for somebody that's trying to place bombs.
Yeah. Well, now the individual is leaning over. Look at that. Full lean over underneath the extended arm,
bush,
going underneath the bush. It looks like the conclusion would be that there was maybe an attempt to place the bomb there first. Leans back and then gets up and wanders off behind the bush in that sidewalk and alleyway that the individual disappears to leads to the DNC area
Now,
where the benches are.
this next part is 102.
On
The next
6th.
thing, backpack guy and man bun guy walk by the bush that the pipe bomber was at the night before and spent a minute and a half. Looked like trying to place a bomb. They walk by the bush once. And then they're gonna.
They're behind some street signs there for a moment. I forget what the timing. It's something like 35 or 40 seconds that they're off camera there, and then they turn around and head back. Here they come back
by
to the bush.
And whoa, what is that? Whoa, that bush looks really interesting.
Yeah. And then backpack guy does the lean. So man bun guy walks on by. Backpack guy stops, leans back, and then looks under the bush that she was sitting at for 77 seconds the night before.
How did he? So the probability of
Now we're into probability.
Let's
again.
go back to probability. This was at 1 minute in 102 and change. So this was he's looking under this bush. 12:42 is when the pipe bomb at the RNC was reported, and 20 minutes later, at 102, this guy has gone to the bush,
Right.
where the pipe bomber had loitered, sat down, rummaged around in the backpack for a minute and a half the night before, not finding anything there, but looking under that bush once as a pass-by, and the second time very inquisitively, obviously.
Interestingly, 1 minute before the two counter-surveillance officers arrived and casually strolled past the bush, a construction worker in a vest also walked over and leaned and looked for quite some time, staring at something under that bush. And then the maintenance worker, construction worker, then wandered off. They never interacted. We've never seen them on camera interacting with that particular individual. No, we don't know if that was an undercover asset or just a construction worker. That's all we know. He was wearing construction worker's vest. But he saw something as well. Now, our video expert that we've been working with for a year and a half on this, interestingly enough, I had been working with him for months. And he's an anonymous guy, chooses to be anonymous. He calls himself Armitage as our public name for him. And Armitage had been working with us for months, and then in March of this year, the FBI became curious about his work, and they started reaching out to him as well. And he was a very earnest young man, just wants to see the truth get out there, wants to see this thing solved. And so he just starts handing over all of his work to the FBI. I don't know how much of this he ever delivered. I know he did not deliver this particular event to them. I don't know if he had it yet. But what we do know is that those two counter-surveillance officers were part of 3 teams that were sent out after the first bomb was discovered over at RNC or behind the Capitol Hill Club. And that these guys made a beeline to that one parking lot, got out of it, did their first pass by of the bush across the lawn, and they hung out there for a while, for about a full minute or more. They just kind of, it was very obvious that they were stopping kind of just to, okay, there's the bush, how are we going to get to the bush? What do we do here now? And then they went all the long, because they could have cut straight across and made a shorter trip to the DNC, but they didn't. They went all the way around the long block, under the train track, and then they show up. And the first time they pass the DNC, they don't stop at all. They don't even acknowledge the Secret Service or the Metro PD car. They don't stop for the bomb. They don't look. They're supposed to be looking for devices. That's what your report said, is that they were deployed to look for similar devices, quote unquote. But they weren't looking for anything. Never did. In fact, most of the time, if you'll watch, backpack guy's doing this while he's walking the whole time.
Okay, so let's back up. Here's at 12:38, Carlin Younger discovers the pipe bomb at the Capitol Hill Club. At 12:42, it's reported. At 12:53, the outer perimeter of the Capitol is breached.
Right.
At 12:58, counter-surveillance units are deployed. By 1:02, those counter-surveillance units, the pair, backpack guy and man bun guy, are walking by the bush that the pipe bomber had spent a minute and a half at the night before, trying to place a bomb or something. And then 30 seconds later or a minute later, they go back to the same bush and stop, and one of them cranes his neck to look under the bush.
Right.
Not finding anything there, they go to the other location where the pipe bomber had spent considerable time the night before.
Right.
But as you said, maybe they go by it twice before they happen to find it.
Right.
But they happen to find it at 1:05. This all happens in such a short time span.
Right.
And they have no good reason, at least back, a man bun guy, when I talked to him in my office, for why they went to that particular location. No good reason for why they didn't keep looking for bombs after they found the second bomb. But the thing that cinches this for me is that there was this other location, let's call it location C, that both suspects, because the person, I'm going to call the hoodie person who places the bomb as a suspect, and according to Investigation 101, anybody who finds the bomb is a suspect.
Right.
Both suspects end up at the same location that never did produce a bomb, by the way, as far as we know. And nobody's ever told us about this.
Right.
What is the date? It's 2025. This happened 4.5 years ago?
Yeah, we're only 6 weeks or less away from this being 5 years.
And nobody's ever told us that this person that the FBI's got a $500,000 reward out for spent a minute and a half at this bush at the Congressional Black Caucus Institute, sat down, got rummaged around in the backpack, it looks like tried to place something there. And nobody ever told us that the counter-surveillance units, that they went to that same bush twice.
Right.
And one of them craned his neck to look under that bush.
This is what it appears to me, and I have to use all the weasel words, apparently, allegedly, those kinds of things. And this is what got you to 99%, is that these individuals, after getting out of their SUV, they made a beeline to the only two places where the hoodied individual sat down the night before. The hoodied individual, the first time that she, they went to the DNC was apparently just taking a break and resting on the bench because there was no effort to lay out the bomb that time. And in fact, when this individual got to the DNC bench the first time, and the FBI has released that frame altered, granular, looks like a claymation stop, motion video. Clearly the person has the phone out and is manipulating the phone while sitting at the bench. Gets up, leaves, then goes to the bush. Now, if I were...
The Congressional Black Caucus Institute bush.
Correct.
Yeah.
Then goes to that bush after going to the DNC first. And if I was the lead investigator at the FBI, I would be having my analysts and such put together a conjecture that would say, okay, this doesn't appear to be the first target, DNC. It appears to me that CBCI was the first target. But something happened when they laid the device there under the bush. What we have conjectured is that something broke off of it. Alligator clips, maybe some wiring or something like that, which immediately was recognized would make this inoperable or at least not sellable as a viable device. And that's why it was immediately retrieved, put back in the backpack. Then there were more calls made, what do I do? And that ultimately the DNC was then the backup location for that device to be dropped. That's my conjecture, that's my theory.
But we also know it's nobody's ever said in this flurry to find these pipe bombs, right, that they had this grainy video of a pipe bomber at this, on January 6th, they didn't know about all this surveillance video and a pipe bomber going to DNC or going to this bush. In fact, it took your guy 4 years.
Right.
Yeah, right. When we look at this video, it's a miracle your guy found it.
Yeah.
Artemis.
Artemis.
Armitage. Okay,
Armitage.
Armitage. It's a miracle because what he's done is to zoom into a camera angle that nobody would expect.
Right.
Would have that person on it.
And at a place because it's so dark, and then interesting, there's traffic lights going on, so we get some illumination from red light, green light, so that we get enough illumination to pick the bomber individual out of the darkness.
So if it took 4 years to find this video, they didn't have this video the day of.
No.
And say, oh, look, we saw this pipe bomber here for a minute and a half. That's why we should go to this spot for a minute and a half. That was all after the fact when they came out with that video.
And I've had access to the Capitol Police radio comms for 3 years. And so I've listened to, 9.5 hours of, all of the activity from early in the morning till late in the evening, or later in the evening, on January 6th. And when these events that we're talking about today take place, you hear the dispatcher reporting over the radio that there has been a suspicious device found at the RNC. And then, of course, units are deployed to go handle that situation. And then some 20, 23 minutes later or whatever, a similar device is found at the DNC. And we hear that units are deployed to go handle that situation. But the one thing you never hear is anybody going, can we have some units go over to the DNC and the CBCI and check out a couple of bushes over there for us that we've seen on camera? No, because they don't know to look on camera yet. And as we've pointed out before, there's 1,800 cameras, and times 17 hours, that's over 30,000 hours of video right there that they're going to look at in 20 minutes.
So let's tie this all together. We've got the fishy, how did they know exactly where to look, including the place where the pipe bomber tried to place a bomb.
Right.
It was police. It was Capitol Hill police, right?
Yeah.
That found these bombs, and they should. I hope they went and bought lottery tickets.
Well,
after finding after going to these two locations, But that's police. There's the Capitol Hill police nexus.
Yeah.
Then we go look at the phone record data. Well, who was excluded? Capitol Hill police.
Right.
And then we go to the person of interest in your article from a couple weeks ago. That's a Capitol Hill police officer. It's a small circle. Like, there are a lot of things that point, not with 100% certainty, maybe each of them with a high probability, but when you take them all together, and the fact that I got to interview at least one of these guys,
Right.
and he never told me about this other bush.
Right.
He didn't have answers for why they didn't look for more bombs after they found the second one. And then we got the ATF person in charge of the bomb stuff happening on January 6th is now at Capitol Police handling the interview. Mm-hmm. So there's 4 connections to Capitol Hill Police. And so each one of those, in my mind, reinforces the other. That there is some, the phone records, they didn't look for Capitol Hill Police in the phone records. The lucky finding of where the pipe bomb was, and the lucky finding of where the pipe bomb wasn't, I'll
Right.
call it.
Yeah.
The gate analysis, and then my interview here in my office it was a different office here in the Rayburn House building when I interviewed him. It's just too many things, and then also the FBI's just sort of, maybe it's a blind spot. They just assumed from the beginning, if you rule out anything that could implicate an inside job, then you're never going to find the inside job.
Well, I think not all investigations, but in some of the biggest investigations in the history of law enforcement, sometimes luck is needed to stumble accidentally upon a lead, or you've been pulling a thread for 3 years, and then all of a sudden you pull it one more time, and then the light bulb goes off. Mm-hmm. And that I can tell you in all honesty, that has happened to myself and my partner Joe Hanneman in the investigative process in looking at this. And we've been shocked a couple of times that after working on this for so long that we saw the light mm-hmm. when it did go off. And it's very possible that even with the FBI's $11 billion a year budget, that they just didn't yank on the right thread. I don't know.
There's another thing that comes back to the Capitol Hill Police nexus. They control the cameras. They can point the cameras.
Yes.
And in a lot of the instances, like when the pipe bomb was exploded, that's the most obvious instance. They pointed all the cameras away from the pipe bomb, right. So you couldn't see that happen.
Right.
Now,
More importantly,
we did get to see it because there was another camera they forgot to point away, or maybe it wasn't pointable.
More importantly, they know where the blind spots are in their coverage, because it's not 100% coverage out there, mm-hmm. and there are blind spots. And where the bomb was found at the DNC was, in fact, a Capitol CCTV blind spot. It wasn't a DNC camera blind spot because the FBI released a couple of minutes of the hoodied bombers' trips to the DNC benches. Mm-hmm. That's all they ever released. Where's the other 17 hours of those 2 cameras?
From the DNC.
From the DNC.
They should have been rolling the day of January 6th.
I suspect that when the FBI acquired those couple of minutes of visits by the hoodied bomber, that they got it all. Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they capture all of that at the time? But what Loudermilk said in an interview just very recently, he said that the FBI told him that all of that additional footage after that had been overwritten.
They've also got Ring cameras, right?
You would think,
the
yeah.
FBI should have.
FBI has many Ring cameras that we've not seen yet.
I know people that live in that area where the pipe bomber traversed on January 5th.
Right.
And one of those people told me that they always thought it was odd that the FBI never knocked on their door.
To get the ring camera.
Yeah, well, and their ring camera, or they thought it was odd that they didn't knock on their door to see if they could look at their router and see if any phone had tried to connect to their router. Because routers in the neighborhood
Right,
should get pinged
right.
with a MAC address or something if some device trying to connect. And the person who lives there, that area, said they never once came, asked us for any.
Now, the FBI does say that the one time when the hooded bomber did stop on the street, it's one of the clearer videos they've ever released, and is actually on the phone, messaging, talking on the phone, gets up on their tippy toes, I'm being careful here, gets up on their tippy toes to kind of look down the street towards where the DNC is. They say that they did try to get a ping from a router on that, at that incident right there. But nothing conclusive. So, in conclusion, where's this going now? Are we going to get assistance from the FBI after 10 months of this administration? Is this really a top 3 priority to them or not? They said it was.
Well, we'll see. I think your reporting necessitates some kind of release from the FBI to say something about where their investigation is and what they found. I would like to know their reaction to this, to the Capitol Police counter-surveillance team knowing where the pipe bomb wasn't. I'm saying that facetiously, right? Where it was supposed to be placed, but it wasn't placed.
Yeah.
Why did they go there? Why did they stare under that? I mean, I don't want to, what do you think? If there had been a piece of the bomb or something, like an artifact that fell off out of that backpack that wasn't a complete bomb, maybe an alligator clip or something, you would have thought they would pick it up and do something with it if there was actually something there.
Right.
Or would have gone back to that location. If it was a fishy location, right?
Right.
And you found the bomb at the DNC, why not go back to that bush? If there was some physical artifact there that gave you pause.
Something gave that construction worker pause. Now, the backpack guy, when he did his lean over looky-loo, we don't know if he saw something or not. We just don't know. But there was an interest in that bush, whether there was an artifact there or just foreknowledge of where the bomber had sat the night before for 77 seconds.
And let me be clear also, when I talked to Man Bun Guy, Backpack Guy's partner, there was no discussion of this alternate location that you're revealing here in this video.
I am personally of the opinion that the former FBI was actively engaged in cover-up. As you've well enunciated earlier in this interview, is that yes, Capitol Police personnel by and large are very good people, especially the frontline officers. I've written stories about them positively as it relates to January 6th. In fact, I believe that they were just as much a victim of the setup that day as anybody else. And they agree with me, by the way. All of the sources, everyone we've ever interviewed, talked to, current Capitol Police, retired, and whistleblower Capitol Police, all agree that they believe that they were set up that day. Even the hardcore leftist Harry Dunn, in his own book, said that he believed that they were set up that day, from a different perspective. But they believe they are all hung out to dry. And, but there's a particular element there that we think have an outsized power, and that probably FBI got a call and said, here's what's going to happen, on this particular investigation, and that they took direction, and that if we are ever hopeful, and we are, that the current director and deputy director are the men that, you know, we hope that they would be in this position, that they are just being withheld
Right.
the truth.
So I think the director and deputy director, when I said FBI management, is either incompetent or complicit. I forget my exact words. I wasn't talking about them.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the ones who were there when this happened and the ones who are still there, like the middle management. That they're either so bad at their jobs they need to be let go immediately after they've been deposed, right?
Right.
Or they're still there trying to cover up for why this investigation, every time it seems like it had a good lead,
Right.
they gave it up. Why didn't they find this video that your guy filed? Your guy's not getting paid. He's not an FBI. The government's not paying him to look for this stuff.
No.
How did this third location that I'd never known, and I spent as much time on this as any other member of Congress looking at these videos.
But you know who the FBI did pay?
Did pay? Oh, who?
Over the January 6 affairs? They paid private citizens, including European citizens, as CHSs. These are the group of people called the sedition hunters that tracked down the 1,600 people that got charged. They did, in fact, employ or contract with actual citizens to do that work for them. But they haven't done that here on the pipe bomb. Mike Benz made a great suggestion the other day. I forget which program he was on. He just said, let me make it easy for you guys. Just release everything you have and let the internet do what the internet does.
Because they got to have some ring camera stuff we've not seen.
Right.
The Capitol Hill Club videos, like there's
Yep.
got to be more of that. There's got to be RNC video. There's got to the DNC.
Yep.
They need to tell us, did they really lose all that footage on January 6th?
Right.
That would have shown that bench and exactly what happened.
We have corrupted phone files, public. We have corrupted FirstNet, that's the law enforcement network. We have the overwritten DNC cameras. We certainly have a lot more footage, as you mentioned there, the ring cameras for the entire route of the bomber's journey that have not been released. There is so much more evidence, and you can't help after 5 years but ask the question, what's being held from us and why is it being held from us?
I think the only way you could possibly get to the bottom of all this is to get one of these people in. I believe it's a coordinated effort. I believe several people were involved, and I believe it involves a very tiny, small set of Capitol Hill police. And I think the only way you're ever going to unravel the whole thing is to get one of them to talk.
Right.
And so the FBI needs to get those folks in. Maybe offer one of them a deal,
Right.
if they'll explain everything.
Right. No, it is that. You can either live out the rest of your life as a terrorist in a prison cell somewhere, or you can tell us who put you up to this.
Because that's the level of what we're talking about.
That's exactly what we're talking about.
It's terrorism.
Right.
I believe I have asked whether this was a training exercise. I'm not sure if I did ask D'Antuono that or somebody, but we have to rule that out now.
Yeah.
Because they could have said that by now.
Former Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund says absolutely not. He said there is no way we would have authorized a training exercise on a First Amendment protest day, because not only were there 6 permitted events issued at the Capitol, over the course of the 5th and the 6th, there were some 82 permits issued by Capitol Police, Park Police, MPD, et cetera, et cetera. With that much traffic from visiting protesters over that 2-day period, he said there was because anything could go wrong. A training exercise can be misinterpreted and you can have a disaster, a tragedy epic proportions. He said there's no way we would authorize that. But I think that that's the only thing that explains the Secret Service's behavior at the SUV when Backpack Guy went over and notified them that they sat there for another 2.5 minutes finishing their sandwich.
Let's add to the list of things that have been corrupted or destroyed all the Secret Service phones and their records for that day.
Their emails, right.
In spite of
Text, yeah.
In spite of 5 or 6 different letters to preserve all of that.
Right.
They received it from different committees of Congress. They received it from the IG over that.
Yeah.
And they still destroyed the phones. They said it was part of a regular upgrade process.
That Secret Service agent has to be brought in. He has to be interviewed, and he has to be asked, what did Backpack Guy tell you when he came to your window? That you didn't immediately come flying out. You were 10 feet from a weapon of mass destruction, and you finished your sandwich. You didn't stop the train traffic, which was 30 feet away.
Another police connection in this.
Yeah.
I mean, every time you find a police connection, that increases the chances that the other ones are part of some inside conspiracy.
Right.
Well, thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
I look forward to the next thing you release, and we'll do what we can from this end of it.
We need your help. You know, we need your help between you and Chairman Loudermilk of the new Select Subcommittee. We need that help if they're going to be, if these agencies are going to be as transparent as they claim that they are. It looks like we're going to have to force transparency out of them in some aspects.
Right, and there are whistleblowers that have come to me. I've done everything I can to protect their identity, including printing, making public the second letter that I received from the attorney Kurt. And I've got another whistleblower thing that I received last night. I haven't fully digested.
Wow.
What the attorney's very smart. He sends it to me and at least one other member of Congress. Right.
Yeah.
This latest one came to me and Chairman Jim Jordan. And it's not about particularly the pipe bomb investigation.
Right.
But it's about concerns at the FBI.
Congressman, thank you.
Thank you, Steve.